Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Life happens, but finally time to make another video. And this time we got a new project. So in front of us is an '02 Wrangler 4.0 inline six with a 5-speed. Uh, it was in good shape before the previous owner slid on some ice and wrecked it. Since then, some parts have been sold off of it, but let me give you a little backstory here and what I want to do with this. So this Jeep was complete when we bought it, but it had flipped over, like I said, went off the road and rolled onto its side with the back end hitting the ditch first. So it spun around, went in the ditch, and flipped. All this was pushed way up, about 6 or 8 inches forward, and we spent quite a long time winching and dragging and prying all this back out just so we could get the door open. So the entire tub is bent. Now, I did get it good enough to where I daily drove this for a while, or my buddy did. We put this together for him. Then I drove it for a little bit, and then decided, well, I need to either fix the tub or do something else. While we were straightening this out, we did find that the front of the frame is bent from either them trying to yank this out of the ditch or from the impact. So all the control arms were bent up there, and if you look at the front, the frame horns are tweaked. But it drives straight down the road. So, what do? Do I cut this tub out, this section here, section it in? Do I find a whole nother tub and put it onto a tweaked frame? Do I have the frame straightened? It's a TJ. I'm not in it for much money. If I were to go about fixing everything on here, I'd probably break about even with going out and buying one already done. So I thought about doing something different, and that involves doing a body swap on this. So getting rid of the Wrangler tub and putting something else on there. So let me show you what I have in mind. Here it is. So I picked up this first generation Bronco body. Now, it looks a little rough because previous owners have cut out the wheel arches to fit bigger tires like a lot of people have. They put this ugly hood scoop on the hood and ruined that. But let me tell you, other than that, this is an extremely solid early Bronco body. Okay, somebody has replaced the rocker panels, but I did some background research on this thing, and it is from New Mexico, and it shows it. So let me show you. We have a little rust in the front floorboards, which you'd expect, but I mean, in general, a little bit there, but the pillars all rust out on these. We have original paint on 75% of the floor. Has factory roll bar, complete uncut dash, nice hardtop. Now, I did have to pay a pretty penny for this body. Okay, and I had to drive about 8 hours round trip to pick it up. These are just getting harder and harder to come by, and they're getting more and more expensive. If you want an all original first gen Bronco, the very minimum, at least around here, you're looking at $25,000 or $30,000 for one that arguably needs work. I got this body for $4,000, which really seems like a lot for just the body of something, but I've got 4 invested in the body. I've only got 2 or 3,000 in the Jeep in there. Why not put this on there? I don't have the original frame. I don't have the original drivetrain. I don't have the components to make this an original Bronco. But if I modify the mounts on there, on that Jeep frame, I think I can fit this body on there. The wheelbase is about 1 inch difference, which is pretty darn close, so you can fudge that in there, 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch front and rear. But yeah, that's my idea. Put an early gen or first gen Bronco body on a Wrangler, have air conditioning, a manual, 4-wheel drive, fuel injection, power steering, cruise, all that good stuff for under $10,000 if you're not counting your time on this. So from what I've looked at on the internet, I haven't found anybody that's done this. We're going to see how it works. I got the body off of the frame of the Jeep, rolled it outside, and I needed a way to get this inside because it was just sitting on this steel frame, no wheels. We don't have a tractor to pick it up. So I had to improvise. C-channel, and some rims and a ratchet strap. Made me an axle, and then I hooked the winch on the front of that Bronco to the back with some tires in between, reeled in the winch to lift the back up into the front bumper, and then I'm using that Bronco to steer, bring this up here. So I'm up to my lift. This C-channel is too wide to fit through, and I don't want the rims to damage this, so I'm going to put down some boards and see if I can just slide this over the top. Okay, update on the project here. I got the body sitting down over the frame. I've tried to center this as best I can. It still needs to come back a little bit, a couple inches, to try to center it up. But the firewall is preventing me from doing that. So there's a lot of good points, or a lot of good things about this setup so far that are going to make this job pretty easy. But the one big hurdle that we're running into is the engine placement versus firewall. So you can see in this Jeep frame, the engine is set way back compared to what it would have been on the Bronco. So we have all this room up here between the radiator and the front of the engine, but we have no clearance at the back of the engine. So I'm going to have to chop up this firewall, cut all this out back here, and then extend it further into the vehicle, which really won't be a problem. It's not intruding on the footwell for the driver or passenger. There's no HVAC or anything in the center to worry about. I can make that happen. But in order to set the body further down on the frame to get a better idea of what else I need to modify, I have to cut that out first, because we are on top of the valve cover in the back. The other major issue, it's not really major, but it still is a clearance issue, is back here where the Jeep frame kicks up. So the factory Ford frame would have been pretty well straight across because it ran leaf springs and not coil springs. And right here where it kicks up, of course, we don't have much room, and we really want to bring this body way down. I've come up with a plan for this, though. Once I get this as close as possible, I'm going to take my plasma cutter and use the frame as a set point or a reference, and I'm going to take the plasma cutter and cut out that same shape in the wheel opening here. I don't want to destroy the whole tub, but I want to cut out that much, save this piece, and then where it intrudes into here, place my original piece here, and then use flat metal to box it back in. So when you look in the back of the Bronco, you'll see the factory tubs and then a small mini tub in there. I could cut the entire wheel arch and extend them in, but that is a lot more work, and I'd like to be as minimally invasive as possible. I want to keep all the original Jeep electronics and harness, so I'm going to strip all the original Bronco stuff out of the bay. I mean, we've got 3 ballast resistors, 1, 2, 3. We've got the old starter solenoid, voltage regulator, aftermarket coil, and just a bunch of wiring that is all hacked up. I'm going to try to save the original Bronco harness. I don't want to, scrap anything that's of any value or I think could be valuable. But I'm going to take the column out, all these factory brackets, take them off, box them up, and start with a clean, open engine bay so I can get access to cut that and start figuring on where I'm going to place my computer, fuse box, if I can make the Jeep column work in here, and so on. So that's the plan. So right now I'm going to set up and strip the engine bay down so we have a nice clean slate, and then we will lift the body up and off and try to mark to cut out the firewall. So that's what's next. Let's go ahead and do it. Quite a bit of wiring and brackets and just stuff we're not going to need out of here. And just that little bit is starting to fill up this box already. Like I said, I need to get this body down on the ground where I can climb in it safely and start taking out the factory dash, the air or heater box, and all the wiring here. I think to take the whole dash out, which is going to be my best bet, I'm going to have to take this hard top off find some place to put it, lay the windshield down to get to bolts, I believe, are on top there under that pad or in front of it. That hood has to go. I have a replacement, so that might as well come off. So lots of disassembly coming up here, but then we can see what we're working with and start making cuts to get this sitting down lower. Now, if I run out of room where I can't cut the firewall out anymore to fit the engine, so the lower I drop or try to drop the body, the more it hits the back of the engine because the firewall is at an angle. If that's going to start intruding too much into the cabin area and affecting legroom, which I don't want it to, I might have to settle for the body sitting a little bit higher on the frame, which isn't ideal. But the good news is this frame is sporting a 4-inch or so lift kit on it. So if I went back to stock springs on here, lowered the frame down on the suspension, it would help close up this gap here on the wheel arches, make the whole thing sit a lot lower and look more reasonable. I'm going to try not to go that route. I really want to get the body down as close to the frame as possible, but it may not be feasible without extreme mods to get it sitting all the way down on here like I want. So that might be a way to cheat and close up that gap and make it look okay. But regardless, I need to come down several inches towards the frame with the body. So I just want to say that was the easiest heater box I have ever removed in my life. I wish all manufacturers did it like that. I've spent hours before taking a whole dash apart just to get to the box to replace a heater core or, blower motor or something. This literally took, I don't know, 10 minutes to take this whole thing out. Had 4 nuts there, 2 heater hoses, slid it out from the dash, disconnected this hose, disconnected those, unplugged the wiring, and a couple Phillips screws to slide the control cables off. And here we are. And now, got all this side pretty much bare, except for this harness I have to feed through the grommet there. And I got to take the fuse box loose from the glove box liner and take that out. Speaker's loose, can take that out the back and work my way that direction. That was awesome. I didn't think I'd get that far. I just took those nuts loose just to prep, realized it was loose, walked around here and dropped it out from under the dash. So that's cool. That saved me a lot of time. I got the body sitting where I want it, down on the Jeep frame. To do that, like I talked about before, I had to radius out the edge of the wheel tubs in the back, which I didn't really want to do, but it was the easiest way to go about it. And once I build some covers there, it really doesn't intrude into the bed area very much at all. So I'm okay with that. It's just loosely sitting on here. I don't have any bolts or mounts made. So the way I measured this out, it's sitting 3 inches above the factory Jeep mount. So I can run a 3-inch body lift all the way around to support the body. So I'm 3 inches above back there. And I have some old leftover 3-inch spacers. And I'm 3 inches from that cross member in there. This side's better. That side needs some rust repair done to it. But there. So you can see front to back, we're not lined up, but that's close enough I can do something with that. But the height's right, forward to back is right. I removed the factory sway bar, which would have bolted in between those 2 bolts right there, so I could bring the body down. I also drilled the spot welds and removed the Bronco radiator brackets, which hung down and formed a cradle underneath the grill here. So those are removed to make room. And I'm going to use the factory sway bar locations plus maybe some fasteners in the side here, build a bracket, and then come up to that body mount right there on either side. So that'll tie that in. And then they sell an aftermarket sway bar that goes through this hole in the frame here, relocates it. I'll purchase that and install it so I'll retain all my handling characteristics. So biggest deal was cutting out the firewall and trying to position this to where I didn't intrude too much into the driver's footwell area, as I want to be comfortable when I drive this. It's right on the border. I'm going to have to get creative with a gas pedal, but most of the foot area is okay. I've started laying the harness out and positioning everything. This is where I want my fuse box. I retained the factory Jeep fuse box and mount. I just flattened out the tabs and formed it to the shape of the wheel arch here. See, I just have to extend my battery temp sensor, locate that here. I have to extend or undo the loom and move my connectors for the PCM. And I've got that loosely bolted with one bolt back here, hidden out of the way. Harness is run across. The easiest part was the whole headlight grill harness here. So I didn't have to do anything to this. I just laid the harness in. There was already some holes in here. I popped my retainer clips in. I can either remove these or drill a couple holes to add these others, but let's see, I'll show you over here. So the headlight's plugged right in, same style headlight. The ground cables line up with the Bronco grounding locations. The horn reached the factory horn location, and all I did was bolt up the Jeep horn, plug that in. And then the Jeep has a turn signal in the front of the grill, or the front of the fender rather, and a side marker, and so does the Bronco. So all I have to do here is shorten up these wires and splice them to the Bronco turn signal and side marker, and I'm done. Everything up here is done and ready to go. Horn, lights, turn signals, already finished. So that's a huge step. This won't be so bad. The ABS module and all that, I don't know if I'm going to delete it or make all new brake lines and relocate it up onto the fender to get it out of the way. Don't know. There's still a lot of ifs, but we are making progress, and I think it sits just about right. And if I ever want to lower it down, I can get rid of the suspension lift off the Jeep frame, or at least reduce it, and it'll look pretty good. So frame is high enough tucked in there that I can make a bumper and fill that in. It doesn't look ridiculous like a huge body lift. And with it sitting correctly, the bottom of the rocker panel is about flush with the bottom of the frame rail. So really cool stuff. And like I showed before, filler neck is right there at the original Bronco filler neck. So a lot of hurdles to go, but I can't really complain about how difficult it's been, because this is a 1970 body from Ford going on a 2002 Chrysler product frame. So it's about as good as you could hope for. All right, do some more work and update you later. Okay, I'm back on the Bronco Jeep project. So I'm trying to figure out the body mounts so I can go ahead and get this body secured to the frame, and from there I can go work on, steering column, mounting, the pedals, everything else that's important. But this is the first step. Now, the placement of the body mounts on the Bronco in the back overhang the back of the frame, so I needed a way to extend out the back. I was hoping that I could just buy a aftermarket Jeep bumper, mount back here, and just drill a hole right down through the top of the bumper and tie in with that. So that's why I got this bumper here. You can see that it mounts flush to the back of the frame and gives me a nice clean flat slate here that I could have drilled a hole down through, and voila, the bumper would become an extension of the frame and take care of my body mount issue. But that bumper is too wide to fit inside of here. And with how much the body overhangs, I would have had to have cut the bumper down significantly, and it would have sat in flush with the back of the Bronco. It would have not really been a bumper. So instead, I had this old stock TJ bumper sitting around, and when I sat it up here, I noticed that the top of this bumper is flush with the frame. So I cut out 2 plates and drilled it to accept the TJ body mount bushing. So this end of the plate will bolt to the frame, and the same here. I haven't put it on yet, but you can see that I've drilled 2 holes and clearanced for the, where is it, lower half of the TJ bushing, so that'll still fit beneath that plate. And from there, this will bolt to the frame. I have all the factory bolts that would go into the bumper also go into the frame on the backside, so that'll be 6 plus these plates. So that'll tie in real nice there, and that'll take care of my body mount issue. And so from there, I also have this nice flat area on the back of this TJ bumper that I can mount perhaps a factory Bronco bumper to. I can put that back here and it'll look like it's supposed to from the back. And I don't have to worry about it being able to tow with this extension because I have this frame mounted stock TJ hitch. So this will be plenty sturdy enough for holding a bumper, stepping on, a little bit of an impact. I've got plenty of bolts and mounts, but I can still tow what I want to with a factory hitch. So hopefully that makes sense. Not the best at explaining things, but that's what I've got going on. So I just squished 2 plates together, clamped them together, and drilled all the holes in it, and then ground the outside to make 2 exactly matching plates. And then this sit there, get bolted to the bumper and the frame, factory TJ body bushing here, and then Bronco 3-inch body lift spacer on top, and Bronco hardware all the way through and fastened at the bottom. So I drilled these a size up, so let me get that out of the way. They have a little bit of play, so I can adjust everything, but I've measured out and the body is square back here to the frame. So when I'm done with this, I can go to the front and I'll have a little bit of adjustment to get the very front bushings lined up, and then I'll work my way to the middle and build there. But this way, again, I'm doing very minimal modification to the Jeep chassis and the Bronco body. So if I ever want to get a better Jeep frame or a different power plant, or something like that, I can just roll this frame out, swap all my mounts over to the new frame, drill a couple holes that I need to, but otherwise, I can go anywhere and replace this as I need to. Same goes for the body. If for some reason or somehow I find a really nice Bronco body or, reproduction, I want to be able to bolt this on what I have with very minimal modifications. So that's the goal. Try to minimize what I'm doing to the 2 key components, Jeep chassis, Bronco body. But enough talking, I'll finish this up and we'll go from there. Okay, the rear body mounts are almost done. The only thing left to do here is to drill out these holes and put 2 bolts in on either side in the frame. I can't get a drill in there with the body on, so that'll have to wait until the body is lifted back off. But I can reach my hand in between the gas tank and here, so I will have no trouble putting a nut and hardware on the back side of these, which is nice. And like I said before, if I get a cleaner frame down the road, I can unbolt this bumper, put it on to the new frame, and drill right through this plate into the frame and put the bolts in, and I'm done. The rear body mounts are done. No welding, no cutting, nothing. So that's nice. And I'm trying to continue on with that up here with the very front of the vehicle, I figured I'd do the very or most forward ones and the rearmost body mounts first to get everything square, and then jack up the center of the body where it needs it and build those to get everything level, because the tub naturally wants to sag here, and you can see the gap between the body and the top after I unbolted it. So I need to get this up where my doors open nice and everything, but I'm going to start with, after I've done that, the front. So coming up here, I have one mount almost done, and I'll show you what I came up with. So I started with a universal weld-on style frame mount that I got off, I think it was Amazon, and for 6 of these, it was $30, which was pretty nice. It is cheaper material. It is thinner than I would have liked. It's a lot softer than I was hoping for, but I still think it's going to work for what I need in this case. But this is what I've come up with. So I utilized the factory sway bar mount holes. As you can see there, those are the sway bar bolts. So this bracket will bolt onto the frame, and with pressure down on it, it pivots down into the side of the frame and supports it there. So from this point, I can do one of two things. I can use these mounting bolts here to locate it, and then I can come in later with my welder and weld the sides to make this nice and sturdy once I'm happy with it. Or I can weld flanges onto this and then drill and tap a couple bolt holes in the frame. So this will be completely bolt-on, which would be nice again in the future if I swap frames. I know where these are and where they're going to be, so I can bolt this down and then use the holes in my bracket here to drill into the new TJ frame and tap them, and again, done. But either way, I'm liking how this is coming. Now that I got one done, I've already test fit this one on the other side, and it lines up and everything checks out. So I will take measurements off of this one, measure out here, and this one should be done in half the time. So that'll go on the other side. Then I'll put my body mount together, plus my spacer, and get the front up where it needs to be. All right. So I've cut or sliced the sides of this mount. That's the first step. And I've chucked it up here in the vise, and I'm just going to crank it down till it flattens this out, and that's how I will form the bolted flange portion. And then this piece here on both sides will get cut out, and I'll use this Dremel bit here to round out the edges so I don't, well, I don't know that I won't, but reduce the likelihood of having fatigue cracks there at the flange, and try to keep all the corners rounded. Then once I do that, I'll trim down this to the right length, my flange, mark the bolt holes, drill those, and then finish off rounding all my corners. And then I'll squeeze this together in the vise to get rid of some of that V there, make it more squared off. I had to do that on the driver's side here to clear the steering box mount and the front welded tube that goes through the frame there. So I might as well copy it on the other side. So that's what I'm going to do. So as you can see, now that we've flattened it out, we're left with these humps here because the vise isn't capable of completely flattening out that metal. Plus, every time you bend a piece of metal, it actually hardens the metal. So that's why if you get a dent or, in something and you try to pop it back out, why it leaves that little ring around the dent, or, never looks perfect unless you really work it. That's because that metal there, where it bent, became harder than the surrounding metal. So it doesn't want to go back to its original shape. But anyway, I need to flatten these out. So I have my little anvil here. I'll set this up and take my hammer, which I use this one, Whoops. Anyway, take this sharp edge here and I'll hit right down on the crown of that. So set that up here. Give it a couple hits right there and then flip it over and finish it off. This takes a couple whacks with this thinner metal here to get rid of that. So just to show you, you can see where I scraped it where that fresh metal is. When I was cleaning up those bolt holes in the grinder, I went over it, but that's where those ridges were, and now this is pretty much perfectly flat. So with a coat of paint, you won't tell those are there. So I'm going to beautify this real quick and continue on. This is what it looks like. Bolted in and supporting the weight of the body. And there's that side. I think looks wise, they turned out pretty good. I'm not really happy with how high the body is sitting. I think what I'm going to do is I really need to get rid of about that much height, the thickness of the body mount, factory body mount there. But I don't want to get rid of this because that's what centers it in the mounts all along the frame. So luckily, since these are a hard plastic, if I need to, I can come back, measure, and cut all these down on the bandsaw down to the right height. So, and if I need to make any minor modifications height-wise, front to back, to level everything out, I can do that, because this frame doesn't match the contours of the body, or it may not perfectly where the mounts are. So that's what I can do there. That's no big deal. But for now, it is bolted front and rear. And next, what I need to do is tackle the center and jack the body up to get all my gaps right. I'll probably come back and bolt the top to the windshield and to the tub back here to try to hold everything square, or at least help it out, and figure out where it likes to open both doors the way they need to be. Again, that side I need to do some floor repair there. It's rotted and it is cracked where the body mount is, so I need to reinforce that. This side's okay, but I think what I'm going to do, at least for the forward mounts here, you can see width-wise they're about perfect, but the Bronco mount is about that far back from where the TJ mount is. So pretty much the same story as in the rear, with it overhanging the back of the frame. What I think I'm going to do is get a really thick plate. Instead of cutting off these mounts and moving them back on the frame and doing all that, I think I'm going to get like a 1/4 inch thick plate of steel, lay it on top of this mount with it overhanging to the rear to line up with that mount, and then bolt or weld it to the top of here, and then gusset it down to the rear of this mount. Something along those lines. This one, I don't know that I can make it bolt on like the others, but I'll try and I'll see what I can come up with. A lot of people would just cut that off, move it back, re-weld it to the frame, and be done. But again, like I said, I want to be able to roll another frame under here with minimal modification. So if I can figure out a mount that'll bolt on to what's existing and still be safe, then that's what I'm going to go with. Another option is, since this again is flat or flush with the top of the frame here, or at least pretty close, yeah, it looks like it is, I could take a bigger plate and lay it up here and bolt to the top of the frame and have it come over and drill some holes and bolt it here. So it'll be a big flat plate that rests on top of all this. That way, that would be plenty strong and may allow me to move that body bushing where it needs to go. So right in this area. I don't know. That's for another day. I'm tired, and just making those mounts up there and the rear body mounts took the majority of the day, even though it doesn't look like it should. It's just the way it goes when you're making everything from scratch. But that is a lot of progress. It's about half the body mount. So 2 in the rear, 2 up front, and then we have 4 more in the center. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. All right. Final update for this video. So this is where we are right now. I'm about to edit this and put it together and post it for you guys. But we're trying to figure out these body mounts, and I think we're going a different direction with them. So what I've done is go ahead and cut off all 3 of the factory body mounts on the frame, which, you know, since they didn't match up, you would do anyway. But I figured what I would do, just to make this simple, I was going to make that plate I talked about laying on top of the mount, and, you know, even started making one, and just decided, hey, this is not going to look very good. I'm putting a lot of work into this, and if I have to cut these mounts off anyway, why not utilize them? So I have my factory mounts here, and if I take the short one, which I need to clean this up, it's really hard getting a nice straight cut on here, especially since they've added those frame repair pieces. But anyway, this short one would have sat all the way on the back, the third most mount there. You can see the shiny metal. Well, if I come in here, and I'll show you on this side because it's a little bit easier. If I place this here, pretty much, you can't really see from this angle, but it's the right dimensions, are really close to what I need. So if I clean this up here, V it out, trim it up, do what I need to do, and place it here, I can weld this back onto the frame, and it'll look factory. So it won't be bolt-on, but if I get a replacement frame, I'm going to be cutting these off anyway, and it won't be much work just to weld on 2 little brackets. And if I'm doing that, look up here, I can just weld down either side of these and be done. Again, it won't be removable, but the fact that it lines up with and is originally bolted on with the sway bar bolts, that gives me a way of locating this to the right position every time if I duplicate this bracket. So before I finish this vehicle up, I have all the dimensions. I can replicate this without having this bracket off. So I can make some of those, and as long as my dimensions are right, it'll bolt into place, and then I can finish weld it, and it'll be right where it needs to be. And so in the end, I think this is the way to go because it's going to look the best. Once I finish grinding and cleaning and fixing their booger welds for this frame repair, this is going to look pretty good. Now for the last body mounts here, instead of making 2 body mounts here separate, I figured I'd make 1. So I have this cross member that I'm going to build out of this square tube, which is the same dimensions as the frame rails here. But it's going to sit on top of these frame rails, run across, and you can see that body mount bushing there. Another will go right here, sit on top. So we've already checked the height is correct and everything. Basically, I'm going to weld a flat plate on the ends here. This isn't centered, it will be flush with the end of the frame. And then I'm going to utilize those 2 holes in the frame, which were for the factory steps. So I'll drill all the way through the frame, and then I will step these holes up a size or 2 so that I can slide in a spacer the width of the frame, so that when I bolt all this together and tighten it down, it doesn't squeeze the tube together, because I want it to be tight, I want it to be sturdy, I don't want to weaken the frame. So I'll slide some steel spacers in there, the width of the frame, maybe weld them from this side, so that when my plate that'll be welded on the end of that tube slides over the outside of the frame, all I have to do is slide a bolt all the way through, nut it on the back side, and this cross member will be bolted into place. And again, swapping frames, this will come off, and those factory step holes, which are on pretty much every Jeep frame, TJ frame I've come across, will serve as a point of reference. So not too bad for a Chrysler frame that was never supposed to be under this Ford body. past that, we've done a lot of work trying to get everything leveled out because, this body has some rust in it. The frame has been tweaked from the accident, so we've been, jacking and prying and trying to get the body to where all the doors and gaps line up real nice before we weld anything permanent, because we want it to all function correctly when we're done. The biggest issue is somebody has replaced these rocker panels, and they didn't do any trimming or anything. They just threw it on and put a bunch of self-tappers in it to hold it, and they didn't square it up or anything. So our door gap is nice all the way around, but you can see down here, huge gap in the rocker, no gap back there. So we can fix this by undoing their riggery and straightening the rocker back out. But that's what we've been fighting. And you can see here that shim on this body mount, that's to compensate for the frame being tweaked. So that's how much of a difference we have between this frame rail and that frame rail over there to get the body square. So we'll have to add some washers or, a more permanent shim on this side for now, until maybe later when it's done, I can take it to a frame shop and have them straighten it back out. But I want the body to be square. I don't want to weld the body up, reinforce it, do anything permanent with it out of square, because if I do replace this frame, then that's going to flex the body in all the wrong ways. So take the extra time now, make sure everything's nice and level body-wise, and then I can shim my body mounts as needed to match the frame. But that's what I'm doing right now. So that's where we're at, finishing up on the body mounts. Once I have some more progress, we'll come out with a part 2 to this huge project. But all right, I'll see you guys later.